Thank you. They've been teaching us in schools that the history of advanced human societies is about 7,000 years. They tell us that everything started with Sumerians. However, just 30 years ago, Encyclopedia Britannica and other official mainstream sources were telling us that Sumerians are actually about 5,000 years old. And just 50 years back, we were taught that it was only 3,500 years old. However, the history of advanced human societies are much, much older. We can witness that only in the last 10,000 years, we've been having civilizations like Sumerians, but also Babylon, Akkad, Assyria, Hittites, ancient Egypt, India, or China. But this is only the last cycle in our civilizations. Before that, we did have more cycles of civilizations. Now, every time that humanity would reach the peak, then the global catastrophe would come. And that was the case 12,000 years ago, with the end of the last ice age. Before that, we had another peak of human civilizations. Most probably, we talk about the civilizations known as the legendary land of Atlantis, Lemuria, Motherland Moon, Og. And before that, there was another catastrophe, 18,500 years ago. And before that, another one, 34,000 years back. Then the solar flame would destroy most of the living creatures on the planet. Before that, 55,000 years ago, and 75,000 years back. Then we had a huge volcanic eruption in Indonesia. For hundreds of years, the sky couldn't be seen. So in the last 100,000 years, we had cycle after cycle after cycle. Instead, the mainstream science is telling us that human history is just the evolution. And then, tens of thousands of years back, we were nothing more than primitive caveman. And only today, in 21st century, we are the most advanced, the most intelligent, and the most beautiful. Well, we are not. There were times when humanity would reach very high spiritual peaks, and there are different ways of obtaining the knowledge. Today, it is through science, technology, and scientific ways to get information that allow us progress. Before, there were another ways. For example, today, if we want to move big, heavy weights, we invent cranes, forklifts. Then we move 5 tons, 20 tons, or 50 tons. Well, we can see in many examples on all 6 continents that civilizations would move hundreds of tons in mass of just a single block. In Lebanon, we have a case of blocks of 1,650 tons being moved for 1.5 miles. In Egypt, the biggest stone block in the second largest pyramid, the Khafre Pyramid at the Giza Plateau, was 220 tons. Unfinished obelisk in Aswan, in the southern part of the country, 1,450 tons. Just when mentioning the pyramids, the biggest, the largest Egyptian pyramids, the Great Pyramid of Egypt, more than 6 million tons. In Peru, we can see amazing examples of construction techniques where the ancients were using polygonal blocks, not with four corners only and four sides, but with six, eight, and there is a block in Cusco, in eastern part of Peru, with 26 corners. And what they would be doing, they would be installing them one next to each other, and you could not get a piece of paper in between them. How did they get this knowledge? You go to Easter Island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and you can see the famous stone heads and stone bodies. The biggest one, over 300 tons, on one little remote island. You go there, you talk to the guides at the site, they will try to convince you that the ancients were using little pieces of stones as tools, shaping those beautiful, perfect heads and half bodies, moving them for miles, and installing them so they can watch the ocean. There must be another explanation. The megalithic walls, the stone spheres all around the planet, dolmens, hundreds of thousands of menhirs, huge megaliths present in Western Europe, but also America or Pakistan or Bangladesh or India or Nigeria or Senegal in Africa. And of course, the pyramids. Those huge stone structures require an explanation. First, from a construction point of view, and then second, even more important, what was the purpose of those monuments? They've been telling us in schools that Egyptian pyramids were built by the pharaohs as tombs. Well, wrong. According to non-scientific Wikipedia, there are 118 pyramids on Egyptian soil. Wrong. I've been researching, investigating, and visiting 155 pyramids in Egypt, and not a single one has a mummy discovered within the pyramid. So, where the mummies were buried? In the Valley of Kings, 200 miles to the south from the famous Giza or Gizeh plateau, near the Luxor, Thebes, Memphis. Those sites were having the bodies or mummies of the pharaohs from the first dynasty, second, third, fourth, 19th, and so on. The second thing they are telling us about the pyramids is that they were built in Egypt and Mexico. And again, wrong. The pyramids were built on all 6 continents. In Australia, there is a Gympie pyramid, 1.5 hours to the north by car from Brisbane on the eastern coast of Australia. It is nicely shaped hill with several tiers, steps, megaliths on the top, forming the circle, and 4 more megaliths showing the cardinal points, east, west, north, and south. And even though the Aborigines were present in Australia for most probably 55,000 years, they say for themselves it's about 20,000 years, so many generations. But we do not have a proof that Aborigines did indeed build this structure. And then in Asia, there are more than 250 pyramids in the Chinese central province of Shanxi. 20 biggest one are more than 12,500 years older, and the rest of them, 230, were built from 2,300 years back until 1,000 before present. Interesting thing is that the newer pyramids are not bigger, they are smaller, made from inferior materials, from the mud bricks, and they do belong to the known generals, princesses, or members of royal families in China. But the biggest one were built from granite blocks and sandstone blocks. And the Chinese archaeologists, as they told me, do not have permission to open those pyramids for another generation, another 25 to 30 years. Who built those pyramids 12,500 years back when official mainstream archaeology is telling us that this was the era of Paleolithic times, and people did not have tools, technology, or techniques to build such magnificent structures? In Indonesia, western part of the island of Java, our friend Dr. Danny Hillman discovered the pyramids in the middle of the jungle. He named it Gunung Padang, the Hill of Light, or Pyramid of Light. It is more than 24,000 years old, and it changes the history of this part of the world. Unfortunately, the mainstream science, the cultural establishment is against the investigation, so he was stalled for almost 15 years. Cambodia, in Southeastern Asia. Besides the beautiful, magnificent Angkor Wat, the capital city of the Khmer state from more than 1,000 years back, which has many pyramidal temples, also is a home to the beautiful seven-tier, seven-step pyramid called Koh-Ker Pyramid. Perfect orientation east-west, north-south, built from the volcanic stone and the sandstone, with a lot of quartz crystal, with a lot of running water, with the resonance chambers inside the pyramid, tunnels, and so on. Now, when I would be visiting those sites, I'd realize that there are certain criteria that has to be met in order to have a functional pyramid. You go to Africa, besides 155 Egyptian pyramids, we have 224 Nubian pyramids in the northern Sudan. To the eastern coast, in the middle of the Indian Ocean, 7-step pyramid in the island of Mauritius, built from the volcanic stones. Their orientation to the major astronomical and calendar features. For example, the side is oriented to the sunrise during the summer solstice. And look at us today. The spring just started. The ancients were observing what was happening on the sky, and they knew the value of the major dates like solstice or equinox, not only because of the calendar, because of the agriculture, as archaeologists are telling us, but also because during those days, our planet, our mother planet, was the strongest. If the sun rays are the strongest and the sun is exactly above our heads, like during the summer solstice, then our planet, the health of our mother Gaia, is the strongest. And it's important because of the purpose of the pyramids megalithic sites, and stone spheres. We realize that those sites, those stone monuments, actually amplify the natural energy sources. When we go to the western coast of Africa, Canary Islands, the largest is Tenerife, total of 104 pyramids on two islands over there, step pyramids. The Spanish scientific community do not recognize them as pyramids. They are saying it is just a pile of rocks built by local farmers a couple of hundred years back. Why not? Because they don't want to admit that there was a civilization which was advanced called Guanches, who had direct ties to the land of Atlantis from 12,000 years back. If we go to the South America, we will realize that there are more than 300 pyramids in Peru. Tucumã Pyramids, for example, more than 200 of them in the northern part of this exciting country. In Bolivia, there is Acapena Pyramid Complex, a beautiful, but today, unfortunately, mostly destroyed. But we can see granite blocks, perfectly shaped, like they had some type of the machining work applied over there. Central America, my favorite. My PhD is about the Mayan pyramids. Sometimes people ask me, can we map all the pyramids around the planet? I said hardly, not only because we have not discovered all of them, but because of their number. In the five Central American countries of Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Belize, the Mayan civilization built way over 100,000 pyramids. 97% of them are still covered by soil and vegetation, most of them in the forests, jungles. For example, the most beautiful Mayan town of Palenque in the Mexican state of Chiapas, 25 ancient pyramids were uncovered. The dirt was removed. But originally, there were 1,229 pyramidal structures in this town only. The tiny Belize, the smallest Central American country, had more than 1,000 Mayan villages, towns, and cities, and every one of them would have several, if not dozens, of pyramids. Let's go to the United States of America. Nobody teaches us that the pyramids were built in the US. However, in the state of Illinois, there are 120 Cahokia pyramids in the Cahokia National Park. Everything they tell us about this location is wrong. Cahokia is the name of the minor Indian tribe that came to this part of Illinois in the 17th century, and they had nothing to do with the pyramids. As a matter of fact, they call them Cahokia mounds. Well, the mound, according to the definition, is something made out of soil, dirt. But these are not mounds because they have four different construction materials: sandstone, blocks, pebbles, rocks, sand, and when they completed the structure, They cut the squares of grass and soil, turned them upside down, and covered those structures. Today, 120 survived, but there are no investigations. I asked archaeological at the site, why? He told me, well, because of two things. First, it's very hard to get permission to investigate it, which was odd because there's the government land, there is the government established museum, and the government paid archaeologists. It should be very easy to get permission. And secondly, he said archaeology is very expensive. Of course, archaeology is expensive because it takes years or decades to get the full information about certain sites. But if tiny Bosnia can have the most active archaeological site that we've been running, and Bosnia is one of the poorest countries in Europe, how come the world's leading superpower cannot finance those research? It seems that it had to do with something else, change of the history. Those pyramids were not built by the white colonists, Europeans. They were not built by the people who lived there, American Indians. They were built much before by advanced civilization. Finally, we are coming to Europe. Three pyramids in Spain. They are called Palencia Pyramids. Unfortunately, out of three, one has been destroyed completely just 10 years back. In Italy, 5 pyramids in the continental parts, 43 pyramids on the island of Sicily, and one step pyramid in Sardinia. Greece is a home to 16 pyramids, Hellenicon being the oldest beautiful stone structure. And finally, Bosnia. Back in 2005, armed with the pyramid knowledge, I came at that time from Houston, Texas, where I spent more than 2 decades. I came to my home country where I was born and the little Bosnian town of Visoko to visit the local museum. But what really caught my attention was this hill, as everybody called it. And even though it was covered by soil, vegetation, pine tree forest, I could clearly see 4 sides, 4 triangular faces, obvious corners, and the same slope from bottom to the top. So it did have pyramidal shape. I took compass and it showed me that those 4 sides are perfectly oriented to the cardinal points, east, west, north, south. And that's how the pyramids were built. I immediately knew that it was an artificial structure that's been covered by soil after thousands of years. We had wind bringing the dust and the soil, and then rain and the seeds, and the vegetation started growing. So back in 2005, I asked for the permission from the Ministry of Culture in Bosnia to do some preliminary research. Everything we did, geological core drilling, archaeological trenches, lab analysis, were pointing to anomaly, anomaly, anomaly. So, I wrote my first book about the discovery of the first European pyramid back in 2005, and I announced the news to the world that we have pyramids in Bosnia. At that time, Reuters was there, Associated Press, France Press, all the regional media, TVs, web portals. So, 2005, the world learned about the pyramids in southern Europe. I went to the National Museum offering them collaboration in this project. They refused. They told me, we never had pharaohs in Bosnia, therefore we cannot have pyramids. I went to the Department of Archaeology of University of Sarajevo, and I got similar answer. We know every square meter in Bosnia we have no pyramids. And then I realized that those people still live in the 19th century. They were programmed to think that pyramids can only be found in Egyptian desert. So I established non-profit, non-government foundation under the name Archaeological Park Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun Foundation, named at the major structure which I named the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. We started the investigation, and it has been a very exciting project ever since. We discovered 6 pyramids so far, which we named the Pyramids of Sun and Moon and Dragon, Earth, Love, and the 6th Pyramid. We discovered a tumulus complex. In archaeology, the tumulus is conical artificial hill. For example, Silbury Hill in England, in southern part of the country, is the best known in the world, but also Marlborough and some others. And also we discovered 6 entrances to the prehistorical underground tunnels. In the last 17 years, we have cleared more than 2 miles of those tunnels. And we suspect that probably 60 miles of those tunnels are hidden below the ground. So when it comes to the archaeology, this is a huge discovery. The size of the pyramid. As we know, the height of the famous Great Pyramid of Egypt is 146.6 meters. Well, the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun is more than 360 meters, 2 times higher and 10 times the size, the volume of the Great Egyptian Pyramid. When it comes to the orientation to the north, which is extremely important, mainstream scientists do not know why. Independent researchers also, they have no clue why the orientation was so important. When the researchers don't know, they use general terms like because of the religious purposes, because of the ceremonial purposes, but they don't know. They don't realize that everything is energy. Let's remember the brilliant mind of Nikola Tesla. He said, if we want to understand the universe, we need to watch it through energy, frequency, vibration. Well, our planet is nothing but a huge energy ball which vibrates. And in such a huge energy balls, we have movement of the energy. And the strongest movement is north-south and east-west. When you build the 4-sided pyramid and you're perfectly oriented, it initiates the movement of the energy within the pyramid. Well, the Great Pyramid of Egypt has a perfect orientation to the cosmic north. The error is just 0 degrees and 3 minutes. The Khafre, the second largest pyramid, 0 degrees, 3 minutes. Myceren, which is the 4th largest in Egypt, 0 degrees and 18 minutes. Bent Pyramid in Dahshur, bent, 0 degrees and 12 minutes. A beautiful red pyramid, also in Dahshur, the 3rd largest pyramid in Egypt, 0 degrees, 5 minutes. Well, these are almost perfect orientations with the 0 degrees error. But according to the State Institute of Geodesy from Bosnia, the orientation of the northern side of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun has an error of 0 degrees, 0 minutes, and only 12 seconds to the right, using, of course, scientific instruments like total station connecting to the satellites. So, this second element is important because the Bosnian Pyramid is having the most precise orientation in the world of all ancient monuments. The next element when it comes to the pyramid construction is the material. In Egypt, limestone and granite from Aswan and limestone from 4 quarries around Cairo were used to build those magnificent monuments. In Mexico, sandstone and granite. In Guatemala, shaped volcanic stones. In Peru, adobe bricks. Adobe is when you mix clay, sand, water, and you place it under the sun in the molds for 20-25 days, and you get your construction materials. In China, they use sandstone and granite as well. So every different location were using local construction materials. In Bosnia, when they were building the tunnels, they were doing that in the material called conglomerate. And conglomerate is made out of pebbles, rocks, and sand. So they had to remove hundreds of thousands of tons of conglomerate. What did they do with this material? They mix it with the melted clay, and they got the strongest concrete ever. When we make concrete, we use sand, water, and cement. Our concrete material, when it comes to hardness, that determine the durability of the concrete, are in the range from 10 megapascals to 60 megapascals. Well, the Bosnian Pyramid blocks have hardness from 73 to 155 megapascals. It's superior to our concrete in 21st century. And the second element of quality of concrete is water absorption. If water can get inside the concrete during the winter times, especially in the area where we have freezing temperatures, and the water turns to the ice. And ice has a tendency to expand, and then the concrete breaks. So we try to keep the water absorption very low, up to 3%. These are our standards in 21st century. And the pyramid concrete in Bosnia, only 1% of water absorption. Superior. The next beautiful element of this pyramid complex in Bosnia is the age. In the last 16, 17 years, we have done 28 radiocarbon dating and uranium thorium analysis to date the samples of organic materials. Well, the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun is covered in concrete blocks, at least 4 layers, 4 rows. We discovered fossilized leaves between those concrete layers. How did they get there? During the construction, the builders were pouring the first layer of concrete, the second, third, The wind was blowing, bringing those leaves, and then they placed the final fourth layer of concrete. Since since the leaves are organic material, then we can date it. We sent it to the radiocarbon dating lab and we got the results back. 29,200 years plus minus 400 years. This is a radiocarbon date. The calibrating date, or the calendar age, the real age, is about 14 to 15% more. So, the official age of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun is 33,600 years. So now we do change the history. Instead of 5, 6, 7,000 years, we go back for tens of thousands of years and we have scientifically confirmed it. Imagine the shock to the cultural establishment of Little Bosnia, region, Europe, and the world. All the history books will have to be changed. When you change the beginning, you don't add one paragraph in our history books, because when the beginning is changed, everything else has to be changed in Sarajevo, Paris, London, New York, New Orleans. So what are we going to do now? Are we going to do those tectonic changes? Are we going to realize that PhD dissertation of our archaeologists and historians are not valid anymore? The professorships are not good anymore. The way they teach our kids are not good anymore. Or are they going to try to do something else? Try to stop this little non-profit foundation, to stop this project, to stop that little man. And that's what they've been trying to do for years now, through their highly controlled media, like Wikipedia, National Geographic, archaeological conferences, and so on. Despite all the resistance we've been having domestically and internationally, we've been growing year after year. We have opened the project to the volunteers from all over the planet, and they've been pouring to Bosnia. Until 2019, the last normal year, we've had 3,550 volunteers from 63 countries and 6 continents coming to Bosnia, joining us for a week or 2 weeks or 3 months, helping us. And they became a part of a discovery. They were discovering more ancient, oldest, and the best quality concrete blocks, more prehistorical tunnels, organic materials, artifacts. In the years to come, they'll be able to tell their kids or grandchildren that they were there in Bosnia at the source when we needed them the most. This is the most open archaeological project in the world. You cannot go just like that to Egypt and start digging Egyptian pyramids. You will not be allowed. The same thing, Mexico, China, or Peru. But you can come and join the Bosnian Pyramid project. When you go to the other sites, you try to talk to Egyptologists. They are nowhere to find. You try to talk to the diggers, they said, we cannot talk to you. What we do is confidential. Well, guess what? No confidentiality in Bosnia. We are open for everyone. There is interaction between diggers, archaeologists, geologists, with the visitors with the media, with our guests. And everything is done with the smile. This is the vision of archaeology and any other science for the future. We don't exist here to hide the knowledge, because everything we find from the ancient historical sites belong to all of us. When Egyptians went under the Sphinx at the Giza Plateau back in 1999, when they discovered the tunnels under the Giza Plateau, when they discovered the remnants of civilization older than 12,000 years back, that was not the sign that it had to be hidden from us, but the opposite. And this is not the only case. When the Mayan archaeologists discovered that this civilization is much, much older than 3,000 years, and they have direct connection to the civilizations before the biblical flood, they have to share it with the world. When the Chinese archaeologists discovered that the biggest pyramids over there were built after the spaceship has a wreck 12,500 years back, they had to share that knowledge and the knowledge of the clay tablets that describe those visitors and builders. Unfortunately, just a very few archaeological objects, artifacts, are accessible and public knows about them. But even then, they are highly controlled. For example, the Turin King List in Turin or Torino, northwestern Italy. It lists all Egyptian rulers. We have three phases. The last phase, phase number 3, is the phase of sons of gods, or the pharaohs, as ancient Greek established the name. They started ruling 5,100 years back with the king Menes, who united Upper and Lower Kingdom. But before that, we had phase 2, with the demi-gods. They would rule Egypt 200 or 300 years each. And before that, we had the era of gods, who descended from kingdom of heaven to the kingdom of earth. And they were ruling Egypt 1,000 years each. When you rule 1,000 years and you have mortal humans who live 30 or 50 years, then of course you look not only royal to them, but divine. Who were those first rulers? Who were those gods with a small g? The first one appeared 42,000 years back. 42,000 in Egypt and in ancient Sumeria. They had 4 phases. First or last 3 are the same like in Egypt. But the first one in Sumer was from 273,000 years back. And the first rulers, the first gods with a small g, would rule Sumeria 30,000 years in average. Alajar, 28,800 years. So now we can see that history of our civilizations, humans and others, is much more complex and much more interesting. And then we come to the question, what was the purpose of those monuments? The ancients knew that the most powerful geometrical shape when it comes to the energy is the 4-sided pyramid on our planet, they would amplify natural energy sources. And we know that through the Bosnian Pyramid example, because we applied interdisciplinary knowledge, not only archaeological knowledge, Egyptology, geology, paleontology, classical sciences, but also high-tech methods, geothermal analysis, satellite analysis, georadar analysis, different types of dating, but also the experts in energy phenomena, the physicists, electrical engineers, sound engineers, telecommunication engineers, experts from Serbia, Croatia, Finland, Italy, Germany, US, and other countries, medical doctors. So now we know that below the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun is a huge iron plate. Iron generates electromagnetic field. The pyramid pulls this energy and make it stronger. How do we know that? Because we have measured at the base and at the top of the pyramid. At the top, the signal is 50 times stronger. The pyramid is amplifier. Below the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, underground water flow, water moves, releases negative ions. Negative ions are so beneficial to our body and to the atmosphere. They clear the atmosphere from dust, from pollen. They clear our body from microbes, viruses, bacteria, fungi. The values of negative ions in the Bosnian Pyramid tunnels is 50 times higher than on the top of the mountains in the pine tree forests, which was considered the healthiest place. There is a second water flow below the pyramid. Between the two, there is a charge. The pyramid pulls this charge, electricity, generating energy beam to the very top of the pyramid. We are the first one to scientifically prove that the pyramids have this energy beam, in our case, electrical in nature. 28 kilohertz frequency, continuous, because we measure it during the 4 seasons, spring, and summer, and fall, and winter. It is focused. It is focused exactly towards the path of our sun. In the morning, it's moved a little bit to the east, noontime, south, afternoon, southwest, evening, west. This energy beam in science is called Tesla's scalar waves. The brilliant Nikola Tesla, 123 years back, in his lab in Colorado Springs, was experimenting with the subtle, soft energies, concluding that those scalar waves, those energies, move quicker than the speed of light. They can carry the energy, they can carry the information quicker, much quicker than the speed of light. Therefore, this energy beam is ideal media for the communication. So the pyramid is the communication device, the first purpose. The second, people feel excellent when visiting our Bosnian pyramid tunnels. They breathe so well. Deeper they go, better they breathe. Not very logical, but nothing in Bosnia is logical. People with asthma, with other respiratory problems, after one visit, they don't need air pump, inhalator, no more. The sugar, the glucose in the blood, drops for 5, 7, or 8 points. Pains, very often gone. Very serious diseases, also we can see revolutionary health improvement. So our second conclusion, the pyramids were used to protect what is the most precious to us, our health. Why? 9 elements, very shortly. Absence of 5 harmful radiations, cosmic radiations, natural radioactivity from underground, geopathogenic radiation, signal for cell phones, signal for Wi-Fi. No bad radiations. Our body don't have enemies in the tunnels. Our body cells, they start doing their job. They start doing the solving of the problems in our body. They start the regeneration process. They start the detoxification process in our body. The purpose number 3, the pyramid energy improves the molecular structure of the water. The water that we drink, the city water or bottled water, the same thing. No viruses, bacteria. Why? Because of the chlorine, and the chlorine is a poison. They place the fluorides in our water, poison. We can find traces of heavy metals, poison. Traces of plastic particles, poison. The water that we drink is energetically dead. The water from underground tunnels in the Bosnian Valley of Pyramids, energetically alive. The molecular structure shows that. The samples from city water, they look ugly, low level of energy. The samples of pyramid water, hexagonal in shape, hexagon, the most powerful geometrical shape, with a lot of crystal-like structures, energetically alive, high vibrational water. That was the third purpose of pyramid energy. The fourth purpose, to improve the food, the seeds. We did experiment with the seeds of beans, and we noticed that the beans that we exposed to the pyramid energy would grow 2 or 3 times quicker, richer, healthier than not exposed seeds. The fifth purpose of pyramids, to improve our immunity. That's the key words today, immunity, not the vaccine, immunity. Number 6, our blood. Number 7, the atmosphere. Number 8, our spiritual abilities. So now it all makes sense. Why would somebody build 6 million ton structure, Great Pyramid of Egypt, to bury one dead body? But if the purpose was to serve the communities, the living bodies, the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the human kingdom, it makes sense. Because they would be built, those pyramids, to last forever, for millennia. And this is the revolutionary discovery that we have in Bosnia. Once you come with the new ideas in any field, people attack you. It doesn't matter if it is science or archaeology or culture or music or sport or corporate world. There are so many people who always want to keep the status quo. They don't want changes. The bigger the idea, the bigger the obstacles. Imagine you come the biggest idea in the world of archaeology. The pyramids are not tombs, they are energy machines, and they were obviously built but by somebody who knew better the energy, the frequencies, the vibrations. 20 years ago, I remember when watching Discovery, National Geographic, History, or Science Channel. When they talk about Egyptian pyramids, they always mention the pharaohs. Nowadays, they started to talk about the energies connected to Egyptian pyramids.
Dr. Sam, want to
Yes.
give you a 5 minutes heads up before we start taking questions?
Yes, I'm just about to finish.
Okay, great.
So we can see that in the future, people will realize more and more there was a high purpose to those structures. Not only pyramids, megalithic sites like Stonehenge in southern England, Avebury Hill in southern England, Karnak in France, Alesteiner in Sweden, Rujun al-Hiri in Israel. All those sites would focus the energy. Even the largest discovery in the mainstream scientific world, Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey. It has always been about the energy. And with the energy, we have our communication activities, we protect our health, we have healthier food and the water, immunity, atmosphere. People live happier. They have fulfilled lives. And I want everyone to understand the mainstream is actually trying to hide this. They are not out there to help us live better in the more prosperous world. The same thing probably goes for our political establishment. They don't realize they are there to serve our needs, not the opposite. Thank you.
Amazing, Dr. Sam. That's amazing. Wow, what an upload. Thank you very much. Hoo-wah. I'm not quite sure where to start. I have
Yeah.
I have this thought running through my head, and I'd like to hear your opinion on it. There's been speculation, and a lot of people have researched about the water canopy that was around the Earth at one time. What effect would that have had on the pyramids, or do you think when they built the pyramids, they had that water canopy in mind? Because from what we see around the world, they obviously had technology to orbit the planet or see the planet from very, very high perspective. So I'm sure they would have been aware of something like that. That amount of water, what effect would that have had with the pyramids?
You know how in schools they did teach us that about 99% of the universe is actually the empty space. They talk about the vacuum, but I would disagree. I did mention the Tesla scalar waves. In order for those waves to travel through space, you have to have very tiny electrical particles. So the energy, the information can move. So I don't think that there is something like a vacuum, there is something like empty space at all. We always have some tiny particles everywhere. When it comes to the water, it is really a great mystery. The origin of the water on our planet. Is it possible that we do have huge quantities of water in the space, in the universe? I think it is possible. If we have it on one little planet like Earth, it has to be abundant throughout the universe. And then, is it possible that we did have a dome over our planet in the ancient past? Of course, some of the holy books do mention that. And there is a reason for that. I mean, it has to be based on something. Now, was the reason that somebody built protective shield around our planet or something else? It is, again, very possible. But what we do know is that when the last ice age ended 12,000 years back, there were huge changes. For example, the ozone layer on our planet was, until then, 5 times thicker. The atmosphere was different. The environment was different. Our planet was much, much stronger. And when our planet, that living energy organism, is much stronger, when you build those monuments in order to amplify the energy, then the energy was also much stronger. When we talk about our spiritual abilities, What I did not say was that besides 5 physical senses, we also have 30 spiritual senses. And senses like feeling the energy, seeing the colors of our auric field, seeing the colors of our chakras, their positions, how much they open, telekinesis, telepathy, and teleportation becomes possible. In order to have teleportation, you have to have 2 elements. The first one is technique, and the second one is energy field strong enough. Now imagine when our planet was much stronger, and those megalithic sites, including pyramids, work much stronger than today. Most probably they would make very strong energy fields, especially during those 4 major days, like solstices and equinox. And I would say that traveling through space and time was possible. And then most probably, during such travel, or even during the astral projections, those who are making them, they would be in much better position than us to say if the water was present everywhere in the universe.
And that's that's amazing. I don't know where to begin with that either. You're just full of it today, Dr. Sam. Your uploads are just always amazing. We'll take a question from heaven here. I just had a thought when you were saying something and I lost it. So let me recoup myself there, and then I'll ask this question, and then I'll do a follow-up question on what you just said. Heaven asks, obvious question. Earlier on, when you were talking about the cycles, right? She's asking, when is the next event, and is this what we feel in the horizon?
What we can see in the last 2 million years, that we had the change between Ice Age and warm period. Ice Age lasts much longer. We have had at least 20 times with the Ice Age. When it comes to the warm period, they last usually between 8 and 12,000 years. And guess what? The end of the last Ice Age, 12,000 years ago. So the new Ice Age is coming very, very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Is it matter of years, decades, or at the most couple of 100 years? I'm not sure, but it's coming for sure. You know that all our media, they were talking about the global warming in the 20th century. Well, guess what? The temperature actually did not go up in the last century, but down for 0.7 degrees. So they changed the narrative. Instead of global warming, now they talk about the climate change. There are certain powers, and you cannot do anything about it. The power of our planet, the power of the processes that are coming, they cannot be controlled. Some of the civilizations in the past realized that. When I mentioned the gods with the small g, demigods, they knew that they could not prevent certain events. Some of them were planetary events, some of them were coming from the deeper universe. For example, when that planet exploded, that used to be located between Mars and Jupiter, they could not do anything about it. So when those huge rocks, pieces of planet, hit our planet and caused the tragic chain of events with the end of the last ice age, they could not prevent it, and most probably they deserted. At that time also, very beautiful planet. What's going to be done next? We don't know. Some people, like Elon Musk, thinks that there is no hope for our planet. So they think about leaving it. which is a shame. Imagine the resources that this planet offers us. We are 7.8 billion people. They are telling us it's too many of us. Wrong. All of us could fit one state in the US, the great state of Texas. Everything is so large in Texas, everything's so big in Texas.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of distribution, equality. You have 2,500 multi-billionaires who have more than 90% of resources of this planet. It's a shame. So it's just a matter of the equal distribution of different social organizations. And we could live in peace and friendship, and we could be happy. Ordinary people like you and I, we don't need much to be happy with our family, with our kids, with our wives, with our partners, with our mistresses, with whatever, with little travel, seeing the sights, talking to other people. We don't need much. We don't need to have 10 villas or 5 planes or yachts. I mean, you cannot live at 10 places at the same time, obviously.
Mhm.
We don't need much. So it shouldn't be about the greed, about the ego. It should be about the social interaction. It should not be about the social distancing where every person is considered a potential enemy. It should be about the harmony. It should be about the happiness. It should be about the communication among us. So it doesn't matter what the future holds for us, but if we live in a dignified way, if we cooperate with other people, then there is a future. Not for our physical body, it is for one use only anyway, but for our soul, because our soul is going through different experiences. And
Mhm.
this is one of them. He has chosen to come to this body at this particular time, not to hide, to be afraid, to live life in fear, but to experience it and to try to do much more to our fellow friends, citizens. And we have to think if we are going to pass this test. Let's not be afraid. And there is a hope for us that this experience will be rewarding to us and then that we will grow much quicker than during some tedious and boring times with no challenges.
Mhm. I like that. I like that. I really like that. And to go back earlier when you stumped me with the power of the pyramids, I was thinking when you were saying that, I was thinking about Pharaoh Onus, and he is said to have traveled to Orion a number of times using a pyramid. I believe I forgot which pyramid, but he was using a pyramid to travel back and forth. And then when you were mentioning the energy and the power, it would have been a lot more. Do you think that he would have been able to use the pyramid to travel, use it as a stargate to travel between here and whatever planet that he went to around the Orion's belt or in that cluster?
Since 90s from Robert Boal and then later on Hancock and the others, there is an idea that those 3 pyramids at the Giza Plateau match the layout of 3 stars in the Orion belt.
Hmm.
It is possible, even though the 3rd pyramid is always a little bit off from the 3rd star in the Orion belt. Matter of fact, the star constellation of Cygnus is probably the better fit. But let's say that there is a connection between the Orion belt, the stars over there, 2 bigger stars and one miniature star, and the Egyptian pyramids. Is it possible that there was a connection there? Is
Hmm.
it possible that we have a signature from potential builders? It is possible. Is it possible that the Aborigines of Australia were visited but there are space brothers tens of thousands of years back who explained then that their origin is not of this planet. And is it possible that the Aborigines, ever since, were trying to go back to the lands
Mm-hmm.
of the people who actually came to this planet, their ancestors? You know how people are saying that during their dream states, or maybe astral projections, they
Mm-hmm.
actually did find their way to their planet where their origin stands. It is very possible. For us, 50 years is a lot, or thousands of years. But for the universe, it's really almost nothing.
Yeah, not even a.
Travel, yeah, the travel between star constellations can be done in different ways. Not in the rockets that we build today. That's probably the most primitive way to move, we think, at the higher speed, but it's always below the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
And even with the speed of light, most of the star constellations is out of the reach. There are different ways to travel. Not only our soul, but also in the physical dimension. There are probably not one but many possibilities to travel, to move our body from one point to another, to
Mm-hmm.
dematerialize in this world and materialize at some other point. So the idea about the cosmic gate that you just mentioned sounds so logical
Mm-hmm.
because our civilization is no the new civilization is very recent, and even if we had number of civilizations on our planet before us, they are still very new.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I would say that the life, especially advanced forms of life, requires several things, and probably the major thing is how approximate, how close those planets are to the source of the energy.
Mm-hmm.
So, the closer to the center of the galaxy from where everything started, closer to that point, probably the life would start much, much, much earlier, billions of years back than on our planet. Because let's not forget that our galaxy, Milky Way, is at the outskirts of the universe, so far from the center of galaxy. And our solar system is really so far from the center of the Milky Way. So the life that's been started here actually started so late that probably millions and maybe billions of different civilizations, different life forms started reaching their peaks and disappeared so long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not be naive and think that we are the only form of intelligent life and that God created us,
Mm-hmm.
using his picture that, we equal the gods. Because if that would be a truth, then the God had a really bad day.
Oh, that was a good one. I loved it. Let's do a final question, Dr. Sam. And this one is from our grandmother that we had on the other day, Grandmother Suzanne. And earlier on, when you were talking about the pyramids in Illinois, Grandmother Suzanne said, why do you say the Illinois pyramids weren't built by indigenous civilizations? I've been to scores of petroglyphs across the US that tell the ancient stories on the rocks.
The petroglyphs are done almost in every US state. You have them in Texas, in Nevada, Arizona, you have them in
We have some on
Colorado,
Vancouver
Utah.
Island.
Yes,
here as well.
you have them everywhere, east and west. But not only the petroglyphs. Of course, the petroglyphs do belong to the original people of America. But on the other hand, we have structures, constructions. For example, the mounds phenomena in Ohio. Today, in 21st century, 2022, we have more than 42,000 recorded mounds in just one state, state of Ohio. Originally, more than 200,000 of them. And of course, the famous Serpent Mound of Ohio is over there. There are some tumulus structures, huge, like, almost pyramid-shaped structures over there. They are mostly in the central, eastern, and southeastern parts. Unfortunately, majority of the mounds were destroyed from the last quarter of the 19th century, ever since Smithsonian Institute and Smithsonian Museum was established. And there are some interviews in the Chicago daily paper from like 1884, 1886, where the journalists were talking with the teams sent by Smithsonian to those sites, and they admitted that their purpose was to destroy the sites, and whatever archaeological material they would discover, they were supposed to take them to Smithsonian and hide from the public. So the major museum institutions were not established to show the stuff to the public, but to hide it from the public. When it comes to the builders, I am aware that indigenous people were there while most of those mounds were created, but they were used either as labor to build them, but in a nice way, not as the slaves.
Mm-hmm.
The original builders would teach them certain energy properties of those structures. They would teach them astronomical features. They would teach them the calendar elements. But they were not builders. They were not builders because still they did not have the construction techniques to do that. When we mention the Cahokia mounds, the biggest mound over there, which is called the Monks Mound. Why the Monks Mound? Because in the 17th century, Cahokia Indians came there, but then also the white settlers, they bring the monks over there, so they call it Monks Mound. It had nothing to do with the original builders. The largest structure over there is 12% bigger, larger in surface than the Great Pyramid of Egypt. It took 122,000 trucks of material, or equivalent of 122,000 trucks with the construction materials.
Wow.
20-ton trucks. I mean, that's unimaginable quantity of material. Today, there are remaining 120 pyramids, originally probably 220. I mean, in order to maneuver with such huge quantity of material, for the people who would not build, the big structures, indigenous, people, Indians, they were never built such huge structures. Obviously, that was not their forte. That was not something they were doing. But were they there during the construction? I'm saying yes. They did have benefits from those creators, from those builders. So even the US history is much more complex and much more interesting than what they try to portray to us. You would expect that the places like Cahokia National Park, with all those pyramids, if they start doing the archaeology and digging, and if they start unearthing the secrets, they would realize so much to learn from ancient builders. And since it is the US, you would expect that millions and billions of dollars is poured over there, that they would make another Las Vegas, not with the casinos, but with the nice archaeological discoveries. But no, they keep that basically as a secret. They give very simple explanation. They have, for example, in Cahokia, the museum at the site, which called $20 million in 1970s. Now it's like $100 million, and they are saying they had no money for investigation, spending so much money for the museum with the half-naked Indians standing there, shown as the builders.
Yeah, I hear you there. That it's sick, almost. It makes you think, Dr. Sam? It really does. We've like really, literally, not even scratched the surface. We've like just like that, and we're seeing all of this now. Imagine what would happen if we actually scratched the surface. What we would find underneath that, and that's for another day. Thank you very much, Dr. Sam. I so appreciate you, and I just have so much respect for you. I love you very much, and I look up to you, like a mentor, like a father, a brother. You're just an amazing, amazing guy, and I just love your energy. And I so appreciate your contribution to Humanity Unplugged, not only today, but a few days ago when you were part of that amazing panel as well. So before I let you go and bring on my next guest, Flo Karuna, and give us any final words that you have for our audience, and then we will bring Corona or Flo on. I think I got Corona on my mind.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I always like to invite people to come to our site in Bosnia. So much to learn. And our site is so different because when people go to Egypt, they take selfies from, with them in pyramids. They ride the camels. They say they visited the pyramids. It's not about that. It's about feeling the place, feeling the energy of the place, and getting the benefits from the energy of the place. When it comes to the healing, when it comes to the spiritual development, when it comes really to realize how the ancients were able to build such structures. If you can't come to Bosnia, then go to the sites in the US, other places, and try to view them through different eyes. We need to filter the information that we are getting from mainstream media, from different sources, and make our own conclusions. And that's the way to grow physically, spiritually. Thank you very much.